My beloved colleague next to me has some commitments to his La Familia, so we're going to begin. And we're going to model for you in these next few moments what we're going to invite you into. And the fact that we're not going to be introduced is significant because we are trying to focus on what our experience of God is. What has been our experience of God during these days? And how that experience can actually foster our desire for beloved community, for how we imagine beloved community, and actually how we can participate in it. So we're going to use a very traditional form of exploring our experience, which is the examen, an Ignatian way of reflecting upon one's experience of God. And so right now, Felipe and I are just going to have a conversation to demonstrate what we hope we can do together. Because by ourselves, sometimes we don't notice what those experiences are and what their significance can be. But together, we can participate in the ways that God might be working. So, Felipe, what's been your experience?
Yes, well, I mean, first of all, I think I just want to start off by thanking all of the organizers and all of the people that put in just a tremendous amount of work to make this happen. So thank you to all the organizers and the planners. I think ideas and having academic conversations are important, but to have community organizers in this space, I think, was also vitally important. So I appreciate the folks that were in the room helping us to think about how Christian nationalism might be defined and so forth. I come away with the sense of what was mentioned last night, that we have to keep teaching, we have to keep working, we have to keep praying, we have to keep dialoguing, we have to keep keeping on. That was really a profound thing for me to hear last night. The sessions from the very opening evening on Thursday to this morning have only reminded me about the importance of expanding our narrative imaginations, right? That narratives matter, that history matters. I'm a historian, so obviously I'm going to believe this, right? But I think for undoing and unmasking the ways in which the lies of white supremacy and Christian nationalism have, flooded universities, this country, the values, all of that, to be able to undo those things through the use of history and narrative storytelling. I come away, I think, also in hearing and listening to folks that have gone through some pretty horrific experiences in their life or have worked at organizing at multiple levels, to be able to push back, for lack of a better term, to be able to simply not just say, well, that's that other side, they're going to say these crazy things and so forth. But we have a narrative too, and we have a story. And so to remind ourselves of that narrative and that story and to be able to go back, I think I leave here having heard that, having been reminded of that. I'm an optimist just in general. I tend to believe that we're going to be okay. I tend to believe that things are going to work out. And I still believe that, and there's a kind of cautious optimism that goes with all of that. But I also know that none of that happens without a fight, and none of it happens if we don't have each other's backs. And the history that I study, the people that I write about, have always come together, forming coalitions, multi-ethnic, multiracial coalitions, around this idea that we have to protect each other and we have to look out for each other. And we might not always agree on things, we might not always see the world in quite the same way, but when we understand ourselves as human beings and as people that are in a struggle and that are fighting, that we can look after each other and we can do these things. And as a professor, part of the job is to look after and take care of my students in whatever way that I can. And that means standing in solidarity in whatever way they would want me to. and pushing back as best that I can with my administration and with the university and where in the place that I am committed to and that I work. And so those challenges, I think, remain immense for me as I go forward here, moving on. But it's the moment that we're in, and I feel very blessed to have been a part of a conversation. And I think it's also, people talk about study groups, and I think that's an important component of it, because study then hopefully would lead to some sort of action, or that even as we study, we're in action, right? So those things matter to me. They're important. It's what I've been hearing all weekend.
This is fascinating, because I so appreciate the conversation we had about history and the way you're talking about it. Because to me, the connection between expanding your history and resisting, staying in the struggle, means something different to me just from today. As I said to you, I'm going to share this with you and with the rest of everyone. Sudanese scholar, my history, my great-grandfather was conscripted, he was Irish, conscripted into the English army and fought at the Battle of Khartoum. And that bomb that he said, colonists put in, that's inside me. That was put inside my family, and we brought it to America. History is real. And like when you talk about history and knowing our history, what's powerful to me for you as a historian is you're saying, Laurie, it's inside of us. It's not something out there as abstract concepts. It has an impact on how we understand ourselves and the world. Am I right, Felipe?
You're right, Laurie. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to get to know you.
Same here.
I got to rush out of here like I told you,
Okay.
because I got to go make this event for my daughter tonight.
Yeah.
So everybody say a little prayer for me. I'm on my way to Chicago right now. I got to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Laurie.
Bye, guys.
So we had to adjust according to the needs of the participants here.
Okay.
Laurie's gonna do it.
Well, you know what? What you just witnessed is something that I think deserves reflection upon. Because it's called moment by moment responsiveness. And I think that as a white person, I want a plan. Give me the outline, okay? Tell me what this checklist is so we can make this organized. I can know what my responsibilities are. And then, it's like Margie and I talked about this. There were so many unknowns that happened during this conference. There were so many unpredictable things. And the question I have for us, and what I would like us to explore, is we have spiritual resources that enable us to be responsive in the moment and capable of being allies. And we don't even know what those things are that are going to be happening. But Ignatius and many other people within our tradition experience God and Christ as a companion. And I want to just say, the road to Emmaus, people who experienced trauma at the death of Jesus meet Jesus, the risen one, who was executed. That story to me is about what the examen is all about. The examen is trusting the companionship of the risen Christ, the one who was killed and resurrected, and who can companion us in the trauma that we are experiencing on a daily basis living in America. And we're all experiencing that in different ways, and it's triggering us in different forms. But how do we really trust and claim our experience of God when in a white supremacist society they say they're God? Okay, how do we really, really trust our experiences of God, particularly when they may seem insignificant, not spectacular, not very important, but like a mustard seed? All right, like dirt that Jesus takes and creates miracles. You know what I'm saying? So for the purposes of our time together, what I just want to invite you to do, if you're open to this is what I would like to suggest. That we do the examen, which would, I'm going to close my eyes during this, so you can if you want to, okay? Put your feet flat on the floor, and we're just going to take a few breaths so we can breathe together the Spirit that's breathing us. That's first. Second, I'm just going to ask you if it's helpful for you to close your eyes, because what I'm going to do is ask you to imagine things that have happened during these days. You can do that without closing your eyes if that's not comfortable. I'm going to ask you two questions. First, what are the things that touched you? What feels alive? What's remaining that you want to stay with? And then I'm going to ask you to reflect on what's troubling you. What's painful? What's, unfinished for you? Then, if you want to talk to God about that, great. If you want to just dwell with that, great. But just be with us in the silence. And then we're going to take a few more breaths, and we're going to talk to each other. Why I'm planning that is because if there's any part of that you want to opt out on, it's perfectly fine. So let's take some deep breaths. And just be aware of some of the sensations in your body, even just your breath coming in and out of your nose. And your body in the chair, sitting on the seat, your feet on the floor. And letting your breath be a way of bringing your mind and your body together in the same place at the same time. You may want to close your eyes if you have not done so already, and if it would be helpful for you. Just going into your mind's eye, into your imagination for a minute. And allowing any memory of something that has touched you maybe where you feel connected, alive, opened. As that memory comes to you, let it take up space. Which is to say, you may want to just notice where you feel this memory in your body. Are there any sensations in your body that are associated with this? If you don't notice that, you may want to just dwell with the details and the thoughts and feelings that arise. Now, from this space of liveliness or grace, what are any of the experiences that were painful or challenging? And if it would be helpful, you may want to bring this into your relationship with God in whatever way is helpful for you. Now I would invite you to recognize that these experiences are ones that you can return to, and you may need to return to. And that I invite you to take 3 deep breaths and join us together in this room. Now, if you would, I would like you to turn to someone close, near you. If you could turn to them. As the teacher always says, and that means right now. Now, this is what I would like you to do. As you turn to the person next to you, if you are willing to do this, I would like you to share with them where your experience of liveliness and grace was during this conference. You could do that now. And I would note for yourself how it feels to hear the other person. And if it's helpful in terms of understanding and opening up the grace that you received. Okay? Okay. Okay. Dear colleagues, isn't it amazing that we could keep talking? No, I mean that seriously. And I think that this is one of the things, this is a resource we have in relationship to everything that we've talked about. Because living in the United States right now, there is a way that the dominant paradigm sucks all the oxygen out of the room. We don't have anything where it's over. We're dead. Oh my God. I mean, that's real, you know? Okay, but Jesus, the risen Christ, is actually with us. That's no joke. And doing the examen is a way of pulling it back and saying, okay, yeah, fine. Okay, but you want me not to breathe. I can't breathe. Does that sound familiar? Okay? Yeah, well, I can breathe. And I'm going to breathe. And I'm going to take back my experience of God. Because you're being nihilistic, idolatrous, and cynical. And I can't afford that. I don't have the privilege of that, nor do my brothers and sisters of color. You see what I'm saying? We got to take it back, and we got to say, no, I'm experiencing this. This is real, moment by moment. And I have a God who has infinite desires for me, more than I can even hope for or imagine. Is that real, or is it just fake? You know what I mean? Like, if this is going to be real, if we really believe this, it's not just an idea, it's a relationship, and it's alive. So the examen is deepening our experience and abiding and living with that and let it be in our bodies, okay? And reclaiming the reality of God as God, not as Donald Trump, okay? Now, just want to say to you, like, early Jesuits did the examen twice a day. Interesting, right? And so now, just to say this to you, I would invite you to go to the person you were talking to before. What do you want to do with this? What next step do you need? Calling a friend? Talking to them? Getting in touch with the cynicism that you have, that you've internalized? Starting to do anti-racist spirituality. Do you see what I mean? There's so many things. So if you would, and you might not know yet, I'm just asking you to think about this, right? And how are you going to nurture that? What do you want to do with it? How are you going to nurture what's happened to you here? So if you could turn to your partner, and if you could look at, what do I want to do? And how am I going to nurture this? Okay, dear colleagues, unfortunately, well, no, fortunately, you can take this out to a meal. No, I mean that in all seriousness, because last night, I thought the fact that we heard those talks with a meal was powerful. It was very Eucharistic. It's like that was food for the journey. And let's use this, you know, as the fifth gospel, you know, like our stories as the fifth gospel, going to eat. And really seeing this as being fed for the journey. Because this conference is not over, right? There's so much that's left undone. Thank God. And I really want to reiterate, just as a person who's committed to anti-racist spirituality, I hope, there's no way we can plan, okay? And maybe letting go of our preconceived ideas will actually open us to a future that we can't create, but that God desires for us, okay? And so the tentative nature of this, the open-ended nature of it, the unsynthesized, untied up on bow on this is really the kind of spirituality that we're trying to support with each other. Because whose voice are we listening to? Whose companionship do we have? Not just each other, but the risen Christ.
Thanks to Laurie, my new friend Laurie that I just met yesterday for the first time. So my name is David Clairmont. I teach in the theology department here, and thank you all for taking the time to attend the conference, for all of what you shared, for the spirit with which you entered into the conversations. We have lots of people to thank for making this conference happen. It was, of course, centrally sponsored by the Institute for Social Concerns. So we want to thank the staff of the Institute and all there who allowed this topic, this very challenging topic, to be the one we'd consider at the spring conference. And then there are many other sponsors listed in your program book that I'm not going to mention all of them. But I ask you to just take a minute sometime and think about all the people that made these last few days possible. I would just want to do a special thank you to Professor Margie File, who's many of us worked with Margie on this conference, but the seed that germinated for this conference really was through her own care and the energy that she put into making all of this happen. And then I'm supposed to make an announcement to remind you that there's lunch available as you take your next steps out. And we thank you all for taking the time to be part of this conversation. And we hope, we trust that in spite of all the dire predictions about there not being any such conferences next year, that we'll reconvene as some version of this group in the years ahead to continue our work.